So there's all sorts of cross currents here, and the argument, the one argument that seems to me to be sort of pathetic is this notion of President Obama's not macho enough. Of all the cross currents that are involved in this, one thing is clear, and that is there is no overriding geopolitical interest of the United States in this. There is obviously a strong interest in regards to the EU. There is also, to be fair, a 1993 or 96, I think it was, treaty that the United States was part of that would ensure the sovereign integrity of former, I guess, republics within the USSR, of which the United States is a signatory. Clearly, the Russians have violated that treaty. Ukraine obviously borders a bunch of NATO states and EU states. All that said, this is primarily of more geopolitical interest to Europe and the EU, which gets a lot of its energy from there. There's far more that they can do in this instance in terms of cutting off travel to the EU by the Russian oligarchs, freezing bank accounts there, which would put a lot more pressure on Putin. Obviously, the United States can do things like say, you're not part of the G8 anymore. You're not going to be, or we're going to boycott the G8 talks coming up in Sochi, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, this is not in the top tier of U.S. geopolitical interests. But the idea that this comes down to some sort of personality deficiency on President Obama and that he doesn't go topless enough and ride horses through meadows or whatever it is pathetic. In fact, I can only imagine who would make such an argument. Oh, I don't have to.
Yeah, all right, so you were worried after Georgia that this would happen in the Ukraine, and we now are watching what's happening in Crimea. Are you concerned this goes further, that his ambitions are much bigger than even the Crimean area?
Well, yes, especially under the commander-in-chief that we have today, because the perception of him and his potency across the world is one of such weakness. People are looking at Putin as one who wrestles bears and drills for oil. They look at our president as one who wears mom jeans and equivocates and bloviates. We are not exercising that peace through strength that only can be brought to you courtesy of the red, white, and blue, that only a strengthened United States military can do.
Yeah. All right, let me move on. Let me
move on because you're insane. He's one of these, they guys who wrestles bears and drills for oil and orders brutal crackdowns on protesters, and that's what we need, more manly, not mom jeans.
Which red, white, and blue is she talking about?
Yeah, well, I guess also it turns out the Russian flag, also red, white, and blue, and she should know that. She can see it from Alaska. So, look, there's a lot of different cross currents here. And, there's a very good argument that Putin has put himself in a jam that has far greater, I guess, potential for jeopardy for himself and for Russia than anyone else. There is a concern that it's a bit of a bank shot, but there is a concern that this is going to change EU energy policy. Now, one thing you should note, too, the idea that we could do more drilling in this country at this point is ridiculous. We have not since, I think, the 1950s have we been exporting more hydrocarbon. carbon-based fuel. The idea that we could sell natural gas to Europe is fairly far-fetched because we simply don't have the infrastructure, nor do they, to liquefy this stuff and get it over there. It's not happening. So the real question and the real sort of issues that are problematic is that if Europe decides they want to be less dependent on Russia for fuel, then, and for energy essentially, that it could have implications, bad implications, for any gains, at least from Europe's perspective, in attempting to shift away from carbon-based technologies that enhance the problem of global warming. So, that's that. I mean, I don't know what else to say on this. We can bring in experts who will say that Putin had no other choice because he's riding high in a saddle, and other people, who can say that. And I guess going along with that would be that the U.S. and EU forced his hand in this situation. But I mean, what is it that besides switching his mom genes, what is it that Sarah Palin and her ilk would have the U.S. do? Maybe if we all just had a National Wear Dad Jeans Day, we could project that type of strength and force the Putin regime out of Crimea.
Well, I think what you're saying is exactly right, and the practical implications of what they're mostly advocating, besides some possible sanctions, which could be a good idea, but they're talking about drilling and the Keystone Pipeline, which is insane.
Well, what is the Keystone Pipeline is not going to be?
Of course not.
It couldn't be any further away. How is China getting this this refined bitumen? How is that going to implicate anything?
Absolutely. No, so that's total nonsense. And the other thing that they're pushing for is missile defense shields in Poland.
Right.
So just another boondoggle.
Of course. Maybe if we roll back the minimum wage, Putin will see that we mean business. It's ridiculous.